Tepper to add more of this angular guitar work to the mix. Tepper had taken on the mantle of Zoot Horn Rollo in 1975 and remained in the Magic Band until it dissolved 7 years later. He was the only member of Beefheart's ensemble to work with Waits and to see both the similarities and the differences in their musical approach.
Tom is a real nice man. He's a generous man. He was generous with his patience. He was generous with his, with everything, with his relationships, with his sharing, with it. He's just a very generous man. Don Van Vliet is a very selfish man. He's doing his thing fully without considering others, and that's a beautiful thing in terms of him being able to sprawl as wide and as deep as he can. But as a guy to hang out with, you know, it can be abusive, it can be difficult, it can be trying. And with Tom, it was always just really sweet and really fun and really comfortable.
And just as Waits brought in Moris Tepper of the Magic Band to add some of Beefheart's sound to his own concoction, he would also be able to bring another rock pioneer directly into his music. Keith Richards, the iconic guitarist with the Rolling Stones, was someone who would seemingly have little in common with Waits' pre-Swordfish Trombones output. Yet as he became more open to new sonic avenues, he embraced the Stones' work and their very distinctive and visceral take on American roots music. Having started out as a pop phenomenon in the early 1960s with a number of imaginative blues cover versions, when guitarist Richards and frontman Jagger began writing their own material, the Stones really came into their own. With a tough and uncompromising sound, they cut a far more threatening figure than their rivals. And after first accepting psychedelia only to quickly dismiss it, they had developed by the end of the decade into a totally unique act, with Richards perennially cast as the ultimate rock and roll rebel.
If Beefheart sort of welded Delta blues to some kind of, you know, surrealist psychedelia, then Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones welded blues to some decadent, quasi-aristocratic idea of evil, shall we say. You know, that's what the Stones managed to do in the late 60s through to Exile on Main Street.
Interesting, if you look at the Jagger-Richards writing team, what was Keith's contribution? I think it's twofold. One is his ability to tell Mick, no, you can't do that, that's crap. And the other, of course, is the riff. And there's just something about a Keith Richards riff, whether it's down to the open tunings that Ry Cooder allegedly showed him or what. But a Keith Richards riff is immediately identifiable. I mean, it really couldn't be anybody else. It couldn't even be Mick Taylor or Ron Wood in the same band. It's a Keith riff, and it is of its own. And you know, that's why he acquired the nickname the Human Riff.
What Richards sort of stands for is something that is really quite kind of primitive and physical and not sanitized or sterilized or blanded out in any way, you know, and like recording the guitar through a kind of cassette machine on Jumpin' Jack Flash it's all about texture. You know, he wants, you know, the electric guitar to sound as close to, I don't know, almost like to make it sound human.
One of the differences between Richards and Mick Jagger is that Keith was never really interested in following fashion. And Mick has always been the ultimate follower of fashion. So, you know, whatever the trendy producer of the day is, Mick wants him to do the next Stones album. Keith will say, why the hell do we need them? Psychedelia comes along and the Beatles have made Sgt. Pepper, and Mick wants to make his answer to Sgt. Pepper, and Keith is very lukewarm about the whole thing. So one of the things that Keith Richards has always brought to the Rolling Stones is bringing them back to base one, if you like. Musically, I think he hated fashion. You know, I think he recognised very early on that there was a standard of good music, rooted music, that transcended fashion. Heath was the first, perhaps, to recognise in the 1960s amongst those rock and roll musicians the value of authenticity.
Whereas once they had been primarily a singles band, with the albums Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed and Sticky Fingers, the Stones proved their credentials at the forefront of popular music. Yet it was their 1972 album, Exile on Main Street, recorded in the basement of Keith Richards' French villa, that particularly attracted Waits, a record with a far more murky, lo-fi production than any of their previous releases.
I think Richards was always interested in sort of oral dirt. He wanted to get down to the sort of dirty sort of sexiness of rock and roll and blues and R&B in its kind of original form, you know, and always had to fight Jagger to kind of hold on to that. I mean, for Jagger, Exile on Main Street sounded like messy, and it kind of offended Mick's sense of quality studio recording. Of course, you know, most people who love the Rolling Stones hail it as their greatest album by some sort of distance. Clearly this registered with Waits and resonated for Waits. He loved the Stones. There was something about the Stones that he really got. And I think Exile on Main Street in particular, the sort of loose rawness of it, the almost lo-fi quality of it, you know, at a